begin, welcome back to my channel. This is Chella Chats. I'm Chella. I'm the one who does the chatting. So first of all, Happy New Year. This is the first video of the new year, and as you can tell, I'm very barefaced right now, and that is because I wanted to do a new type of video. As you can probably tell by the title of this video, and I took inspiration, and actually this is kind of directly from Robert Welsh. He is a beauty YouTuber, and he has a series on his channel where he reads viewer ghost stories and shows like spooky TikToks and does a makeup look at the same time. And of course, he got inspiration from Bailey Sarian's Murder Mystery Makeup Monday. So yeah, I thought, why not? Why not? I have a few spooky stories of my own. Um, this video, however, is going to be a little different. I've already tried filming this a couple of times, and I guess I'm just a little bit inept in the department of multitasking. So I'm going to do my makeup, a video with my makeup, and then there's going to be a voiceover of me telling the story. So I hope you enjoy this, and this version of me will see you again at the end. So let's get right into it. Okay, so like in video me said, I will be doing the voiceover of the story while you guys get to see me do some makeup. I'm not a professional by any means, so please don't judge me too harshly on my technique. And also, if it sounds like I'm reading my story, it's because I am. Also, names have been changed and places have been redacted because there are parties in the story who are still alive, and I do not need anyone coming for me. So this is going to be kind of mostly a true crime story with a slight paranormal aspect. Okay, so this story involves the people who used to live in the house next to mine. Now, when the story first broke, it was painted as a cut and dry self-defense case. The elderly man, who we'll call Joe, next door had gotten into a heated argument with his stepson, who we'll call Dave, which ultimately ended in Dave being killed. Even the neighbors interviewed said that the 50-something-year-old Dave was an alcoholic and was often violent with his 70-something-year-old stepfather. There had been an incident even the year before where Dave was actually arrested for violently attacking Joe. So for outward appearances, Dave was the bad guy, and Joe was simply trying to save himself. Literally, the day before my family began moving in, the elderly woman, who we'll call Mimi, was being moved from her home to a nursing home. And this is where the story got murky, but hardly anyone would find out the true, I'm putting air quotes around that, story until last year, after Mimi had passed. Now, when Mimi had passed, she didn't have a viable will to be executed, so the couple of properties that she had left under her name naturally went to her last living relatives, along with whatever little money she still had left. They really didn't want either of the properties, and coming to clean the house where the murder took place was not really an option for them. understandably so. I would not want to be in a place where someone I knew was pretty close to was murdered. So they reached out to a family friend, we'll call him Tom, and put him in charge of clearing things out and selling the properties. Upon Tom's first visit to the house next door, my dad, being the friendly guy he is, went over to meet what he thought was our new neighbor. Spoiler alert, he wasn't our new neighbor. Dad and Tom got to talking, and Tom informed Dad that Mimi had passed and that he had been tasked with selling off the properties. Now, since my dad retired, he has very quickly become like any typical chismosa. And for those that don't know Spanish slang, basically he's just a gossip. So naturally, none of our neighbors really wanted to talk about what had happened. So we only knew that Mimi had been put into a nursing home because she could no longer take care of herself, and there was no one around to take care of her. So Dad not so subtly asked what the whole story was, and Tom obliged. So Mimi was a widow with an adult son when she met and subsequently married Joe. Dave, Mimi's son, had an ongoing battle with alcohol addiction, and there's a slight presumption that there may have been some drug abuse in there as well, but none of that was really proven. And at the time of the incident, he had been estranged from his wife, presumably for this reason, which is why he was living with Mimi and Joe. Because of all his issues with and resulting from alcohol, Mimi often bailed Dave out and financially helped out more than Joe liked and thought that she should have. Most of the family thought Joe didn't like it because Dave was becoming way too dependent on Mimi, but it turned out Joe had other reasons. So not long before Joe retired, his place of work got a new receptionist. We'll call her Karen, and I think you guys can see where this is going. And she very quickly caught Joe's eye. Now everyone knew that Joe was married, including Karen, but neither of them seemed to care what anyone else thought, and thus began seeing each other. Now, when Mimi became a widow from her first husband, she was left with a pretty sizable inheritance, plus the 2 properties. Mimi had a slight mistrust in banks, so she actually kept a good portion of that money in her house. Some of it was placed in a safe, and some was literally hidden in her mattress. Naturally, her will had things split between Joe and Dave, but with Joe's new affair, he was going to need a much bigger portion to keep his much younger new girlfriend and to keep her happy. He quickly set out to let Mimi know that constantly bailing Dave out was dwindling away her inheritance and tried to get her to write Dave out of the will. But Mimi just couldn't leave her only child high and dry like that. Of course, Dave was pissed when he found out what Joe was doing, and so he confronted him. And that ended with Dave being arrested and charged with assault. But Mimi once again bailed him out, and he moved back into the house. Not long after this incident, though it's not really known exactly how long, Dave and other members of the family would find out about Joe's affair. Some members of the family thought the fight that tragic night was Dave confronting Joe about said affair, while the public was left with the illusion that Dave had attacked Joe through a simple argument. The family was told something slightly different. Now, Tom was told by another family member that Joe had told them that Dave, while intoxicated, was trying to get to Mimi's money and trying to steal some of their other valuables for a drug and alcohol binge. Now, this drastically different story was relayed to the authorities, who also thought it was a little fishy that this part would have been left out, along with the fact that Joe was having an affair. Their investigation quickly revealed that things weren't as cut and dry as they had previously seemed. So it came to light that a good portion of the fights between the two men was in regards to Dave threatening to tell Mimi about Joe's affair, as well as the fact that Dave knew Joe was trying to have him ousted. That night, David finally had enough and was finally going to tell his mother. Joe couldn't risk losing out on that money. Their argument quickly became physical, but settled down. Then Dave went in again. Everything quickly got heated again. Joe then went into his office, got a gun, and perceptibly threatened Dave. When Dave wouldn't back down, he shot him twice, killing him instantly. Tom said there was a theory that Joe had planned to kill Dave eventually, but there was nothing to fully prove the killing was entirely premeditated, so he was charged with manslaughter. At the time of all this, Mimi had been bedridden for a couple years, so with her son now dead and her husband in jail, she had no one. But Joe, being the ever so caring husband, I say that with the utmost sarcasm, was going to set up Mimi to be taken care of while he waited to get out of jail, because of the job that he had or that he retired from. He was sure he'd get off scot-free. And who did Joe think would be the best person to take care of Mimi? None other than Karen. But Karen wasn't just sent in to take care of Mimi. Joe sent her to find Mimi's hidden money and to clear out the home safe. Well, unfortunately for Joe, he was found guilty and essentially given a life sentence, being that he was in his early 80s when he was convicted. Now, did that stop Karen? No. She still felt that she deserved that money. So she continued to go to the home to, quote unquote, help Mimi. And it was quickly, though not quickly enough, found out that Karen would bring groceries to Mimi, but she would leave the groceries out to rot and would feed Mimi only enough to just barely keep her alive. Of course, she didn't want to be charged with murder like her lover had been, so she would give her the smallest meals, but leave everything out to rot. Mimi was then removed from her home and placed in a nursing home, where she lived for about 2 years before ultimately passing. So, where do my family and the paranormal part come in? Well, we moved into the house next door so that we could move my grandma in with us and take care of her, as she had ever worsening dementia. Now, the room that my grandmother stayed in had a single window and it faced Mimi and Joe's house. My room as well has a couple of windows that face that house. Now, keep in mind, there was absolutely no one who lived in that house, nor was there anyone who would come to that house after everything went down. A few months after moving in, I, being the night owl that I am, was up doing some Netflix binging when the cats started getting whiny. So I went into their room to make sure they had food and water, and as I was finishing up, naturally, as I stood straight up, I looked through the windows and I noticed a kind of roundish light hovering in one of the back rooms of the house. And it freaked me out initially, but I quickly convinced myself that maybe it was a reflection coming from my own room and moved on. I didn't really see anything after that, But of course, the dogs were constantly barking at something on that side of the fence, and mainly at night. And my dad told us a story of an incident where, after we had all settled in, that my grandma told him that little people would come visit her at night. Naturally, he just attributed it to her dementia. Well, after we found out what happened, I told my dad about the time I saw the random lights. And he told me that at that time, the house didn't have power. The outside lights were solar lights, and that's the only reason why those were ever on. And apparently, that whole time, Karen was still coming to the house trying to see if she could find that money. And she may have, because when Tom gathered the valuable items, the safe had been opened and emptied. So then, what about what my grandmother had saw? Dad had me go into the house to help him move some heavy gym equipment that was in the room where Dave had been killed. As soon as I got to the entrance of the room, I noticed that it had a long and deep inset window. Now, all along the window were gnomes. Yep, little men. Could these little men have visited my grandma's window at night? I don't know, but it was a massive coincidence that freaked me the fuck out. Also, that house just had such a weird vibe, even before I knew what had happened. And to this day, it creeps me out, and I hate walking past it. And the worst part is, I work at night. The house has since been sold. Has been completely emptied out, and they're doing renovations, which, if you're really into paranormal, if there's any spirits in a house, that typically tends to wake them up. But hopefully it will be sold again, and somebody can breathe new life into it and change the atmosphere. Oh, and that gym equipment, yeah, that is now in our house. Yeah, I know. But somebody get in touch with my dad and tell him that that's not a good idea. Now, before this me departs, because video me was not too bright, let me remind you guys to give the video a like. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And I have a few socials that I will link below, my Twitter and my Instagram, that you can follow so you can get more heads up when videos like these are posted. Yeah. Now back to In Video Me. Alright, and that is the final look. Hope you enjoyed the story. I do have more stories that I do plan to tell, and maybe eventually I'll take viewer submissions and read those while I do my makeup. But yeah, hope you guys have a wonderful day, and